Welcome, everyone, to Death Mentor, an assassin's survival guide. Today, we're talking about swordsmanship, specifically the artistry of combat. Why am I talking about this topic, you might ask? Well, as many of you know, I have been doing a Let's Play for quite some time now that is heavily steeped in drama and story. I do not spend a lot of time talking about game mechanics. And Death Mentor is a place where I can talk about that. And as a Let's Player who likes to emphasize the drama of combat, I think we can all agree that there are times when Skyrim combat can seem very flat. We frequently are forced into these positions where we are basically charging an enemy or we're falling back, and it's just hack, 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 and see who comes out on top. That was not satisfying to me, and frankly, for the purposes of my Let's Play, it doesn't make for really great, dramatic, exciting footage. So I started thinking to myself, how can we make Skyrim combat, especially melee combat, feel more dramatic, feel more like an actual fighting style? And this episode of Death Mentor is kind of the culmination of what I've discovered so far. So let's talk about it a little bit. We've talked a little bit about the why of artistry, but really what is it? Well, what I consider it to be is a technique of fighting, right? Method to the madness, not just rushing the enemy, swinging the sword as fast as you can, hoping that you can out-damage your opponent, basically. So how do we accomplish this? Well, we accomplish this through a variety of things, and I'll be going over each of these in detail here shortly. But really, we need to talk about defense, we need to talk about offensive strategy, we need to talk about the various techniques we can use and the combination of those techniques in battle, and then we need to talk about some more practical issues of battlefield tactics and things like crowd control, stuff like that. So we can do this on the PC, obviously. On the PC, we have a plethora of different options when it comes to mods and so forth that can help enhance the way that we fight. But we can also achieve this on console. We don't have quite as many options, but we can still do it. It's just a question of how we structure the way we fight, and that's essentially what I'm talking about. Any martial fighting style is really kind of a logical approach to combat. And so what we're talking about here is doing the same thing for the way that we approach combat in Skyrim. Now, some of it is kind of instinctive. There's certain things you may tend to do in battle. And so in order to break away from bad habits, in order to be able to, acquire new habits when you're in combat, you need to practice. So let's talk about practicing a little bit. You can do this. Obviously, if you're on a PC, you can use console commands. And one of my favorite things to do is just find an open spot, use a console command to bring in some bandits, and then practice. One thing you're going to have to get used to is dying. It's more of a problem on the console, obviously, because without console commands, you can't, say, put yourself in God mode. If you are on the PC, what I would say is that what we're really trying to do here is create a fighting style or a technique. So there's no harm at all in putting yourself in God mode, going to a secluded place, spawning some bandits, and just practicing. And then once you feel comfortable with whatever fighting style it is you've crafted, you can work on that over the course of time as you adventure, not in God mode, and then spend your perks. You know what you're going to need, so you can spend your perks more wisely that way. You know what areas that your technique may be deficient in. So in this particular Death Mentor episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some footage from my Aranis Arcana Let's Play, and it features our primary character, our protagonist. His name is Fleet Featherstone. He is currently level 44, and we will be focusing on one-handed and dual wielding. So let's get to it. Okay, so before we get started, we need to talk a little bit about our baseline. Let's see what Fleet is up to here. As far as equipment goes, we are going to be dual-wielding a dagger and a one-handed sword or long sword. In this particular case, I am using the Jace's sword mods and the Sorrow katana. The damage on these weapons is greater at base than standard steel weapons. However, they are upgraded using the steel perk in smithing. Now, in addition to that, I have crafted a set of equipment using my enchanting skills that are designed to fortify one-handed. I have a necklace of peerless wielding. I also have a ring of peerless wielding, and then I have crafted a set of boots and a set of gauntlets that also fortify my one-handed skill. Now, this is going to be essential. Damage output is so important. And then in addition to that, you can see I've got the four bonuses here. In addition to that, I rely heavily on Unrelenting Force for crowd control, and we will see that in action here shortly. Now, this character is level 44, and I am currently level 65 in one-handed skill. So let's talk about some of the detail around the different elements of this fighting style. So what are the essential elements of our fighting style? The first is offense. For this character, I have adopted a dual wielding technique, and I'm using a dagger and one-handed sword combination. The reason for this is that it dishes out huge amounts of damage very quickly and allows me to dispatch opponents rapidly and increases my survivability. Now, of course, one of the most important things is our defense, and our defense is going to consist of three elements: protection, defensive fighting style, and crowd control. Now, for protection, this character is using light armor. I have crafted it to the best of my ability. I am using a mod spell from the Apocalypse spell package called Blur, which makes me more difficult to hit, and then I'm using the vanilla spell Oak Flesh to increase my armor rate. My style also includes a parry mod for dual wielders. This can also use block in the vanilla game, so I need to stand in and block shots, reducing the damage. And then for crowd control, I'm using Unrelenting Force, dividing my opponents into groups. As I stun one group, I attack the other. And it allows me to keep them off my back long enough to take some of them out in smaller groups. Now, as for attack types, we are dual wielding, of course, but one of the things we can do is a charging power attack. This does immense amounts of damage and allows me to close the gap with my opponents very quickly. This can be very handy, and those can be strung together if you have the stamina. The other thing I can do is this dual power attack, where I am lashing out with both weapons at once, and then I can string those together into what I'm calling a dervish, where I'm doing 4 power attacks in rapid succession, taking out opponents very quickly and thinning the battlefield in a hurry. So let's talk about some single combat scenarios. This is where you want to start as you're crafting your fighting style. You want to start practicing in single combat. Here I'm using a parry. I'm getting that blocking dagger up, and I'm absorbing some blows. I'm still taking damage, as you can see, but I'm taking a lot less damage than I would otherwise. Now, if I have a single sword, I can do a one-handed block, and I can also bash. If you are faced with an opponent who is wielding a two-handed weapon, such as a great sword or a battle axe, I highly recommend this approach. Blocking with a blocking dagger in parry mode is not nearly as effective against a heavy two-handed weapon. Now, here's an example. I'm fighting a bandit chief with a one-handed weapon and a shield. You can see I'm still taking damage, but I'm taking a lot less damage by blocking these shots than I would otherwise. I have no spell protection in this example. So what do we do about archers? We're faced with this all the time. The first thing we can do, obviously, is a charging power attack. Getting close, and usually the charge will increase your damage such that you'll be able to take them out with a single blow. It is a bit tricky to connect, but you can string them together if you have the stamina. For ranged attackers, you can also use your shouts. This is a favorite of mine. It allows me to attack them at range without dropping my weapons. I can keep my weapons in hand. Now, the other thing that we can do as a swordsman, and probably the most important thing, is be aware of our surroundings and use the environment. This applies not only to archers, but to any melee opponents you might face as well. So this is an example here where I've got archers shooting at me from the wall. I'm going to put the wall of this shed between me and them. I'm basically cutting off their field of fire. And because of the narrow planks here, this narrow alleyway, I'm also lining up my opponents in single file, which makes blocking and attacking easier. It's much more difficult for them to flank me in this position. So let's talk a little bit about blocking and parrying. Quite often, we see warriors rushing into battle, just swinging wildly, hoping that they can outlast their opponent or dish out damage faster than their opponent. That doesn't always work. Sometimes what you really need to do is take a deep breath and use your block. In the vanilla game, well, you can't parry like this in dual wield mode. You can use a shield and some other effect in the other hand. So at the same time that you're blocking with a shield, you can also be healing yourself. You can be reestablishing your flesh spell, so increasing your armor rate. There's a lot of useful things you can do here. A shield will actually block more damage and allow you to bash your opponent at the same time. Whereas what I'm doing right now, this parry, I don't have a bash option. Now, the thing you want to do is keep yourself square with your opponent, perpendicular. That's what allows you to absorb the shots. And then you want to strike quickly from behind your defense, gradually weakening your opponent until you can kind of finish the job. Let's talk about small group combat. I'm going to show you a quick scenario, a 1-on-3 combat scenario, and then we will dissect it in detail. Okay, so let's take a look at this combat sequence. We'll slow it down, put it in slow motion, and we'll dissect it one element at a time. To start with, I press the attack on one attacker. I'm using my dual power attack to eliminate that attacker very quickly, evening the odds, or slightly evening the odds, at 2-on-1. Now I put my defense into place. I block one shot from one opponent and attack the other, taking him out. And now I am left with one defender. Now I have placed this rock at my flank very deliberately to protect them from getting behind me. That way I have both attackers in front of me. Then I back off, giving myself a breather, a little space, and then prepare my defense. When he comes in, I attack from behind my defense, and by this time I've done enough damage to him that I get the kill cam. Now, what about slightly larger groups? In slightly larger groups, the same basic formula applies, except with a larger group, we may also now institute crowd control. So in this scenario, it's going to be a 5-on-1 scenario. Again, I isolate one opponent and go for quick damage. Second opponent, quick damage. Little crowd control keeps one at bay while I fight the other. And now I am in a 1-on-1 scenario again, where I go into parry mode, attacking from behind my defense, and eventually whittling him down till I can get the kill cam. So the same rules basically apply. It's just that in this scenario, I would also introduce crowd control. Now, what about big mobs? Now, in big mobs, we're using the same rules that we did for small group fighting, 1-on-3 and 1-on-5, except now we are instituting also some movement around the battlefield and also putting an emphasis on our spell-based protection. Starting with a charging power attack allows me to close the gap quickly, eliminate two enemies before the others are on me. Then we separate them using crowd control, isolating another. That's 3 down. Dual power attack takes care of a second and a third. Now I've got, at this point, a significant amount of stamina left, so once I get surrounded, I'm in a position to dervish. You want to save your stamina for that big attack. Now it's a dervish. 3 taken out in rapid succession by the dervish. Now I am surrounded by, 3 or 4 here. Now it's time for me to run. So I'm going to create a little space, get a little breather. Now we reorient back to the defense. And we're constantly moving, we're constantly backing up, trying to keep our enemies in front of us, in our line of sight. Separate them with crowd control, isolate and kill. Now there's 2 left. By this point, I've hit them numerous times each, so they're just primed for that kill cam. 1 more stroke and they're done. Now, down to the last opponent, and as before, the defense goes up. We play with this guy a little bit, and then finish it in style. So, what about a tougher enemy? This time we are going to face 15 opponents again, but we are going to increase the difficulty of these opponents by adding some more advanced Thalmor soldiers into the mix. We have 6 Thalmor soldiers with elven gilded armor and long swords, 4 Thalmor guardians with glass armor and weapons, and 5 bandits with miscellaneous armor and weapons, all at master difficulty. Those of you who watch my Let's Play know that I always play at master difficulty, and I have crafted very specific armor and weapons here to help me survive this type of fight. My weapons always have absorb health on them, and I have enchanted my armor with a fortified healing rate. So I basically heal at a faster rate than I would normally without it. It's 25% faster currently with my current levels in enchanting. I highly recommend that you do that if you're going to fight in this way. That way, as you are hitting your enemy, you're at least taking back any health you might be losing as you're taking shots from behind. Now, the other thing you may have noticed is that I get an inordinate number of kill cams. That is because I am using a mod called Dance with Death, and Dance with Death allows you to throttle up and down kill cams. Those of you who have watched my Let's Play know that I am into dramatic footage and storytelling, and part of the drama is the kill cam. The kill cam is what makes things feel cinematic. Now, the drawback, of course, is as that kill cam is kicking off, I'm being hit from behind at the same time. So it's essential for my play style that I have the ability to increase my health rate and to absorb health as I'm fighting. Okay, now this scenario, this clip, is actually taken from the Let's Play that is in production right now, Aranis Arcana, episode 97, chapter 16, part 1. This clip comes directly from that. Now remember, we've got a significantly more dangerous group of soldiers here, especially these Thalmor Guardians with glass weapons. Getting stuck in the middle of a group of Thalmor Guardians is much like being thrown into a blender. So this fight is going to feature much more movement. We need to keep moving around. We need to get our enemies into choke points where we can dish out significant amounts of damage but face a limited number of opponents at a time. Now here we scatter them and we attack the ones remaining. Now this is important. You'll notice I'm not taking them out here. I'm not doing enough damage to take them out right away, but what I am doing is I'm picking away at their health, so when I get my shot, they go down. It's important that I keep doing damage to them even as I'm fleeing, so we will do a fighting retreat, we'll take a few shots on the way, and then we regroup and find another place to set ourselves up. Now here, I'm going down this corridor here again. They can only approach me in single file. Now I'm going to jump up over this shed. I can go up over the top of this, but they can't. That gives me some space. Now I can hang back here and wait to get in a charging power attack. One Guardian down, and a second one primed. That's 2 kills very quickly, and then I move on again. You'll also notice that my HUD is not showing here. I frequently for my Let's Play, turn the HUD off completely because I don't want it to interfere with the drama I'm trying to create in the scene. So at this point, there's a lot of guesswork going on here as to how I'm doing spell-wise and health-wise. Okay, crowd control with a shout. We take him down. Take another one down. 2 dervishes. 2 more down. Okay, we'll pull back. Let's isolate one here. We put up the defenses. There we go. All right. We got 1 bandit left. We can't allow him to get our kill. Here he is. See, we can take a block even from a glass war axe without too much trouble. And I'm not hearing a heartbeat, so that's a good thing. Now, the other thing to mention here is you'll notice that as part of my spell cycle, I'm using Blur, as I'd mentioned earlier, and I'm using this Oak Flesh spell. I have not invested a ton in Alteration, so there are even better defensive spells I could get. But during the course of the battle, I do not have a lot of time to be looking at my HUD, monitoring the status of things. So one of the things that's really helpful is with Oak Flesh, I can always see every time I take a hit, there's a little flash of blue. And I keep monitoring that blue. When I stop seeing the flash, I know it's time to refresh my spell. Alright, 1 guy left. Let's play with this guy a bit. See here now, I'm doing a block and then a quick hit from the left. The dagger blocks and then a quick hit from the dagger. And then when he opens himself up, I go for the big blade. Okay, we played with him too long there. I started to hear the heartbeat. So we took him out. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the CouchWarrior fighting style philosophy in a nutshell. I plan on doing another one of these as I go up level. I will be acquiring more perks and be able to do more damage. It'll be interesting to see how this style evolves over time. So I am going to leave you with one more battle. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Death Mentor.